Hey, everybody. Welcome to Impossible Live. Welcome back if you're joining us and returning. And if you're joining us on a replay, please drop in the chat. But at any rate, let us know who you are. Let us know a way we can help you in between Impossible Lives. And I am delighted to welcome back Amazing D from Fire Within Coaching. And
Hi.
D and hey D, how are you doing?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All right, D, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and then we'll dive into the topic for today. But
Sure.
you, yep, tell everybody about Wonderful D.
All right. Well, thank you, Mel. As always, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So my name is Dee. I am the founder of Fire Within Coaching. So I am a empowerment coach, and I really dedicate my career to helping organizations create psychologically safe environments for their employees. As someone who did not feel psychologically safe and was in really a burnout mode for over 10 years. So it's really important to me to make sure that employees feel like they're psychologically safe and also to prevent workplace trauma, because that is something that is really starting to get a little out of control, where we have about 120,000 deaths per year in the US that are attributed to workplace stress, or we can say workplace trauma. So that's one of the reasons why I am very dedicated to this cause. And I also, from a personal standpoint, I really like to help people be personally safe and feel personally safe, especially coming off of the pandemic, where we really have felt very isolated from the pandemic. So just transitioning back to the new normal.
I love that because we forget sometimes that what there was an old normal. And
Mhm.
welcome, beautiful Leslie. Thank you so much for popping in and joining us today. D, I
Oh, that's
love what you're saying about new normals because I think
mhm,
as our workplaces have changed, where we work from,
mhm.
whether we're working from home, today I'm working from my parents' deck.
Yeah.
you know,
Isn't that great?
that flexibility
Yeah.
of where we're working from um, can kind of really change
Mhm.
our feelings about safety. Some people
100%.
are in offices, some people are not in offices, some people are part of hybrid workforces, others are from remote workforces. Hey, Lachelle, how are you? Welcome back.
Hi, Michelle.
So, in terms of defining safety, is there a way that you would define safety so that we could feel safe no matter where we're at work?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So honestly, safety, it's personal. Safety is very, very personal. So it's up to the individual to create the safe spot and also to say what I'm going to tolerate and what I'm not going to tolerate. So as much as the organization is responsible for ensuring that they create the safe spot, it's also up to the individual. And that there's a lot to do with that, right? Because there's a lot of different things that make us feel unsafe. One example that I use is going to the grocery store. You can feel unsafe going to the grocery store if it's something that you haven't done in a while because you've been very isolated from COVID. So I would say know what makes you feel safe and know what makes you feel not safe. Listen to your body. So if you are someone, will just stick with the grocery store. If you go to the grocery store and you're sweating and your stomach starts to feel, in knots, it's a good indication that you probably don't feel safe. So listening to yourself and listening to the way that your body reacts, because we could tell ourselves, I feel safe, I feel safe, I feel safe. But then you get into the situation and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sweating. I can't breathe. Like, I don't know why. And that it's a good indication it's because you don't feel safe in that situation. So that's the best advice as I can give people, is to just make sure that you listen to yourself and know your body and what your physical reactions are to situations.
Well, I really appreciate that you helped me acknowledge, that for me, biting my lip is one of those things I need to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it until a really good friend and a mentor and a coach watched me do it in a
Mm-hmm.
replay of a video where I acknowledged. I said, "Hey,
And
something
that's
happened to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable." And
yeah.
they're like, "I've known you 30 years. I've never seen you bite your lip." And I smiled at that. I work for a screamer, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and you didn't necessarily feel safe in that environment. I'm not sure. I think then the signs were subtle that I didn't feel safe. It was more like a heartbeat. It was more
Right.
like, something in your solar plexus, or your stomach. Your body
Yeah.
kind of felt it. My shoulders never quite felt relaxed at the end of the
Yeah.
day. It was like I needed a massage to get rid of the knots.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think I love what you're saying about listening to our body, because I think the awareness, and people talk about it from so many different perspectives. Sometimes we're not really, there's so much happening. We're not really aware
Mm-mm.
of what's going on. We forget to do that self check in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially when you have, if you have that overwhelming feeling. So, like you said, if you have a lot of things coming at you, like if especially if you're in a public space, you don't have that time to be like, okay, let me check in with myself, because you have, maybe you're a parent, you have your kids, are running back and forth, mommy, can I have this? Mommy, can I have that? And then your husband saying, hey, look over here, let's look at that. And then this person's running in front of you, and it seems like that's normal, but for someone who doesn't feel safe, that's not normal. And what it is it's very overwhelming, and it just contributes to it. So because if you don't deal with that pinpoint of what's happening, you're just going to put layers and layers and layers on top of it. The next thing you know, you're like, crying over, something insane that you normally wouldn't cry about, but that's really not the issue. The issue is that you just didn't feel safe in the situation to begin with. You just didn't listen to your body to know.
Is there a way for those of us who are in leadership,
Mhm.
or setting up environments for others to communicate or thrive or
Oh,
learn to try and create an atmosphere of safety?
yeah.
I was having a really deep conversation last week with a group of coaches about that, about facilitating and trying to create a safe and sacred space, so to speak.
Hmm.
That it's not always possible in a workplace because
Right.
there's no place to check in with our emotions before the meeting starts,
Yeah.
or at the beginning of the day. In the old days, those things might have happened in the water cooler, or maybe you had a chance to check in with a colleague or a coworker. But in absence, in some environments, Mark Bregman had made a comment about it recently, that sometimes in certain work environments, we don't have a chance to build up the camaraderie that
Right.
makes us feel safe,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, no, and that's true. I would say leading by example, of course, is always going to be the big one, right? Because as leaders, we need to demonstrate the behaviors that we desire, the attitudes that we desire. So if we want someone to, react a certain way, we want somebody to, look at a situation a certain way, we have to do it first. So I would say lead by example would be one. I'd also say feedback. So feedback is a tool that I don't think we use as often as we should. And I think a lot of that has to do with, honestly, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to offend anybody, so we don't give them feedback because we think that they're going to take it, a certain way, or maybe we don't want people to give us feedback because maybe we'll say, oh, yes, give us feedback. But then when we get it, maybe we don't react very well to it. So I would say, have that culture of feedback and offer constructive feedback, and also take constructive feedback. So if I say, Mel, if I say something that offends you, please, let me know. Well, it's the same thing. So if you do something that offends me, I'm gonna I should let you know as well, and have that open dialogue and take the negative emotions out of it and give each other feedback, based on, I want you to be better. I want you to be better. I want to be better. And I want us all to be better. And we can't do that if we can't have those honest feedback and that honest communication. And I would say that that also empowers everybody. I mean, it empowers me to know that someone that I'm going to work with feels confident enough that I can go to them with feedback, but they also feel like they can come to me as well, and nothing bad's going to happen. So you want to do that empowerment, and you want to give them that ownership of empowerment as well. And then the last one that I would say would be foster a culture of learning. So one thing that I've noticed with corporate is, we're not allowed to make mistakes, because mistakes are weakness, or mistakes means that you're replaceable. And that's just not true. So fostering a culture of learning is saying it's okay if you make mistakes, because we all make mistakes. We're all human, and that's how we get better.
So I'll admit it, I'm a little allergic sometimes to feedback, and I'm allergic to feedback sometimes because it's a view of the past.
Yeah. I
And
get
it's hard. And I think this is something that I think mental fitness has helped me lean into.
that. Mhm.
Sometimes, as a leader or our perspectives, we're in the past, we're in the present, and we're in the future.
Right.
And I think sometimes things that we get caught up, and I love it because Adriana, and welcome, Adriana. Thank you
Hey,
so
yeah.
much for introducing me to
Yeah.
D. I'm telling you, we're having too much fun hanging out, and
Oh,
thank you for
no.
that.
Shout
But I
out,
think
Adriana.
definitely, I think the thing about it is the perspective, the reminder to kind of shift our perspective, especially from a safety perspective. If
Right.
something happened 5 minutes ago to make me feel unsafe and
Mhm.
I didn't address it, then that changes how I show up now.
100%.
And it'll change how I show up 5 minutes later, especially
Mhm.
if it's an environment that was in a workplace where I didn't really feel comfortable. I
Right.
kind of, because of Ari's and I thank her, Ari's amazing mental fitness coach.
Mhm.
Ari's helped me in a discussion talk about feed forward. What can I
Mhm.
do to help you in the future? Because
Yeah.
sometimes that past stuff is pretty deep. We need help unpacking it.
Mhm.
We need help sharing it. Sometimes in a workplace, it's not necessarily safe to do it, or as Lachelle says, it's a matter of not being confident
Mhm.
about how to do it. I think I
Yeah.
love feed forward because if we can tie a conversation into something you're working on, it means something personally to you.
Yeah.
It
100%.
may affect your comfort levels. Hopefully it'll increase them.
Right.
It'll let you know I see you, I hear you, I feel you.
Mhm.
Because I think sometimes that's what mm, doesn't make us feel safe at work. We're
Right.
not sure somebody's with us. Might not be on the same team. We might
Right.
not have the same opinion. We might not approach the problem from the same angle.
Right.
We may have caused the problem and not be part of the solution.
Yeah. Well, it's a toxic work environment for a reason. It's called toxic. For me, I look at it as, it's called toxic because I can't move, because anywhere that I move, I'm going to be infected or infect someone. That's the way that I look at it being a toxic work environment, as it's it really, it gives you, you're really chained. You're chained to that desk, that chained to that chair. You can't have an opinion, because if you do have an opinion, You might have stronger people on the team that's what they do. That's what they pride themselves on doing for years, is I call people out on their BS. Well, that's great that you call people out on their BS, but are you doing it in a way that makes them feel safe? And instead of saying, I'm calling you out on your BS, saying, you know what, maybe we should do this from a different approach. And looking at it from that different perspective, because that's all what safety is too, is psychological safety is having a safe place to voice your opinions, a voice to use your voice. And if you don't have that present, then it automatically puts you in that toxic environment.
I think I love that because regardless of whether, as you mentioned, feedback or I'm mentioning
Mhm.
feed forward, we're kind of reminding ourselves and others, try and cultivate what it is you want to see. Try
Yeah.
and try and nourish whatever system, whatever ground you're on,
Right.
so that communication happens, whether it happens real time or in the future.
Right.
And I think sometimes creating an environment where people are comfortable showing up, whether they have a comment,
Hmm.
a suggestion,
Right.
a tweak, some sort of inspiration, or uh, what really can feel like a complaint, to
Yeah.
really just encourage that exchange of ideas so that
Yeah.
there's no feeling of groupthink, or my voice isn't welcome, my ideas
Right.
aren't welcome, I'm not welcome.
Right, exactly. Well, and I think you bring up a good point. I think at the end of the day, we're all just really scared of conflict. And you can even be someone who, I'm great at conflict. Nobody's great at conflict because it's uncomfortable, because that's why it's conflict, right? It's supposed to be uncomfortable, but you need that uncomfortableness in order to change, in order to grow, and in order to move forward. And even myself, I don't like conflict, and people are surprised normally when I say that, because I seem confident when I'm in the thick of it, but I'm not. And that's something to keep in mind too, is that just because someone on the outside is showing I'm 100% confident doesn't mean they're confident on the inside. At the end of the day, we're all intimidated by conflict, because it's essentially you're putting yourself out there, you're vulnerable, and somebody could come in and use that vulnerability against you. That's what they do in a toxic work environment. In a non-toxic work environment, there'll be open dialogue where we can talk about my opinion, we can talk about your opinion, and I'm not right, you're not right. We're both right, because it's both of our opinions, and it just depends on what perspective you look at it from. Perspective is huge with this.
I love that because you're really reminding me that in environments where we feel safe at work or in life, there's an opportunity occasionally to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
We can't always see through each other. We can't always see the
Mhm.
transparency. It's one of the
No.
things too that I'm enjoying, and I want to say congrats as Dee is about to enter cohort 15 for positive intelligence. Woo
I'm so
woo!
excited. I am so
But
excited.
I am too. I am too, because you really help me in our conversations acknowledge kind of origins of safety. I've been really exploring it in the part of
Yeah.
having conversations about exploring trust with others, or how to ignite trust, how to light up trust. But I think if we're free to explore, we're in a place where innovation is welcome,
Hmm.
productivity is welcome,
Yeah.
voices are welcome. I laughed because one of my collaborators, I had come up with a handout about creating conversations,
Hmm.
and I shared it with her, and she's like, "No, these look like something about conflict resolution." And I started laughing later because I realized at the time that I wrote them, I was having conversations with people who are like, we're having trouble creating safety and trust as we
Yeah.
step out. And so
Yeah.
the tips were kind of, here's some advice to kind of play with in when you have an opportunity to have a
Yeah.
conversation with the other person.
Yeah.
And the reminder too that what doesn't make us feel safe at work sometimes is related back, as we're saying, to something we're feeling internally. It's
Yeah.
something very private. It may be something very intimate. It may not,
Right.
it's not in the bag we carried in with the portfolio of papers. It's not in the laptop.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
it's not in the tablet or whatever remote devices.
Hmm.
But I think the part we're reminding each other underneath it, I really appreciate it, is the emotions part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too something, we talk a lot about DEI. What we don't talk about is DEIB. There's another one. There's belonging. And belonging, you can't talk about work environment without talking about belonging, because at the end of the day, that's what people want, is people want to feel that they belong. um as they belong where they are, and they're wanted where they are, and they're people want them there. People want them to be involved. Their opinion matters. So definitely talking about the be and belonging, and that's really where it you know I think that that's a huge part of it as well. And a huge part of not having those toxic work environments would be, make people feel like they belong, make yourself feel like you belong, have that open environment.
It's kind of an interesting thing because I think people don't necessarily think sometimes of workplaces as communities.
They are,
And,
though.
I appreciate being surrounded by and in positive intelligence. It's a really cool community of practice that's a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging group. And I'm
Mhm.
delighted to be a member of it. And in it, it's a reminder, show up genuinely
Yes.
and comfortably. And I'm smiling today because as I'm sitting outdoors and Dee's mentioning community, a bunch of birds came to visit me.
I
You
thought
know,
I thought that's what you were
and
looking at.
before, yeah, and before it was the hummingbirds. So really, I really think I should only do Impossible Lives from my parents' deck during the summer. But
I
we had the
love it.
hummingbirds before, and as Dee's mentioning community, four birds came and they said, "Hey, Dee's speaking our language." You
Yeah.
know, I think if we could create that, it almost does sound like really good music.
Mm.
That you're creating a beat or a rhythm or a
Mhm.
tempo that helps others, encourages others to kind of show up.
Yeah.
And it is hard as a leader or as the person who's not leading a specific meeting, someone else's voice is dominating the room.
Mhm.
And the reminder to set the tempo or
Yeah.
the expectation about whether communication around different topics is welcome,
Mhm.
where it's
Yeah.
welcome, when it's welcome, how it can be shared, how it can be expressed. Because
Right.
then somebody who's showing up maybe for a specific meeting, there might be something else happening with them.
Oh, 100%.
And addressing that safety. And Dee and I have talked about this a little bit before, from people who are leading from a power and control lens and making us feel
Mhm.
creeped out. But
Yeah.
I think also finding a way at work to show up in workplaces more with hope. It's hard because we don't always feel that in our day-to-day lives.
Mhm. No.
But if you're able to show up at work and feel hopeful that on the other end, there's another amazing human who will hear
Yeah.
you, see you, treasure
Yeah.
you. And if it's not a day where you're feeling safe, they'll provide a forum or an opportunity to help you address that in private.
You almost need a safe word, right? You need a safe word. Like maybe you're in a meeting and, Mel's presenting and, and I want to say something, but like maybe I just don't feel safe. I can whisper over to my manager, like, orange. So you know that, okay, Dee's not feeling safe right now. You know, just I don't know why that just came to my mind, but like I feel like you almost just need like a safe word so leaders can tell, because you're right, we're not always going to be able to see this person doesn't feel safe right now. This person's not going to feel comfortable. And I really think it also puts the accountability on the human, on the individual to say, I don't feel safe. But how do you incorporate that in an unsafe environment?
I'm starting in the practice of working with teams about
Hmm.
ways to ignite trust and explore
Hmm.
trust in
Yeah.
something that I'm really grateful that Yvette Bethel encouraged me to pursue trusted leader certification. Then in
Hmm.
the process of doing that, trying to set up a circle of trust and help teams and organizations build them. I'm
Yeah.
starting to visualize how to do that, whether we're doing it virtually or in
Hmm.
person. And I think
Right.
sometimes, just like Dee saying, in terms of having a safe word, that works in an
Hmm.
environment where you're able to build that culture,
Yep.
but having also something visual
Hmm.
that shows that a person may need more support that day.
Yeah.
That if you're on Zoom, something other than BRB for be right back, or the days when some have their cameras off. I was really appreciative last week in a presentation, and to get some really cool feedback about it. There were people joining us for the first time,
Hmm.
and there were people who had been there for a while. There were people also who were traveling, who were on vacation. They were in the mountains, they were
Yeah.
in the car, they were in different places. And someone said, people started, I thought it was interesting in the comments, they were like apologizing for having their cameras off. I don't think I had ever kind of seen that before. But I'm
Yeah.
unable to turn my camera on because of X. But I think the cool part was because of the leadership of that DEIB community of
Hmm.
practice
Yeah.
in PQ, that they knew expressing where they were
Right.
was important. And I think those type of things help us, you know, can help us stay on the same page. If
Yeah.
you're having a work meeting, and Dee and I were talking about this because Dee's having an amazing series of events on Alignable.
Hmm.
And you and I were talking about whether your camera's on or your camera's off.
Yeah.
Your camera
Yeah.
off may not increase other people's feeling of safety, but for the
Right.
person whose camera's off, it may be exactly what I need to feel
Yeah.
safe.
Exactly. Well, and how do we know all this? We know this through communication. So, and that circles back to, we have to have that established safety first, because if I don't feel safe telling someone, hey, I have a stomach virus. That's why I'm not on camera. Like, great. Like, I'm here, I'm present, but I'm not, uh, you don't want me on camera. So establishing that that's okay as well, that it's okay if you're not feeling well, and you don't want to be on camera. Just maybe be more active in the comments, and sort of establishing, okay, this is okay, but then this is if this practice doesn't work, then do this practice. But again, you're not going to know that if you don't communicate with your staff and communicate with your
I
people.
love that because you're also inspiring almost a safety etiquette.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, pretty much. That's essentially what it is. And I think at the foundation of a safety etiquette is humanity. I think, you said something earlier, about, knowing people person to person, but even if you don't know somebody, maybe if you don't even like somebody, remember at the end of the day, they're still human, and they're if you're human, you're attached to feelings. So that's where we get into, treat other people the way that you want to be treated. Well, that's fine and dandy unless you treat yourself horrible.
And really, that I think you're reminding us all that if we're not mm, so from a mental fitness pace or
Mhm.
perspective, people would talk about whether we're in our saboteurs, our
Mhm.
emotional intelligence. People talk about, and I love it because Eve Dee mentioned this from a different perspective. I was sharing this with somebody else. Dee and I, before our podcast, we were having, and I was on her amazing podcast, which I really encourage you. We're gonna share her link, but I really
Yeah.
encourage you to check it out. Is as Dee says, are we in the feels? Are we in our
Mhm.
feels? Because it
Yeah.
reminds you, no matter whether we've named it or not, it's a day where
Mhm.
there's a lot of emotional stuff happening. I
Exactly.
really appreciate you because I'm not so sure.
Yes.
Mental Health Awareness Month. This was kind of filled with a lot of stuff in the air, you know, uh,
Yeah.
and some of great collaborators and wonderful clients to talk about eclipses and changes and
Mhm.
just how we feel internally, and we don't always feel comfortable sharing that.
Right.
Um, it may be a style thing, it may be a safety thing,
Yeah.
and to
Maybe we just
increase
don't want to be
workplace safety.
judged,
That's right.
you
That's
know.
right.
So there, I mean, there's so many aspects, and I feel like we, back to labeling, it's like, yeah, we can label it, but at the end of the day, me being angry is going to look different than you being angry. You seeing me angry, you might be like, oh my gosh, she's irate. But then someone else might see it and be like, oh yeah, she's a little annoyed. So it's that perception piece of it as well.
It is, and I think that's another thing too, is that when something happens in a workplace that there isn't a frame for,
Right.
that creating a space for it,
Yeah.
whether it's to acknowledge it, or I was in a meeting and something happened to cause somebody else have a really strong reaction. We
Mhm.
started talking in chat,
Yeah.
and I realized that me commenting in chat wasn't helpful to the person feeling this really strong emotion,
Yeah.
and had to take a breath and remember, even though we all had our cameras on,
Mhm.
and just before they turned their camera off, to type, relax, offload, whatever,
Yeah.
that being silent, to just being a really good listener, can really
Mhm.
increase someone else's safety. And if you're able to do it in a way where the person really respects that they were seen, they were heard, they were
Mhm.
valued,
Yeah.
you may have done a lot to just increase their comfort levels, because
Right.
sometimes if we can't locate safety, comfort is
Mhm.
essential. Just like people say, your comfort foods. I was laughing last night because my mom's mentioning something, a dish my brother's experimenting with, and we loved his first experiment. She's ready for him to try it again. And it's a reminder. It'll be a comfort food. It'll remind
Mhm.
her of our family being together. You
Right.
know, and but I think somewhere in there, what does make us comfortable, sharing those things can
Mhm.
help others discover what makes us feel safe.
Right.
Because maybe
Right.
we're not sure where to start in the conversation at work. Maybe we're the new employee.
Yeah.
Maybe we're the new team leader. Maybe it's
Yeah.
a first time committee. Maybe it's meeting in a new location. And in some cases, you may be celebrating at a live event with
Right.
colleagues that you haven't met in person since the day of
Right.
your interview, and
Which is
possibly not at
awkward.
all.
Like that could be very awkward. And that's why it's really important for, especially for teams that are virtual, you need to create spaces where people can engage with each other and people can share their thoughts, their motivations, all of it, with each other, because we say, as humans, there's a lot that we don't say. Like, you could be the most outspoken person in the world and you're still not going to say everything, that maybe should be said. And a lot of it is, we need to start talking about the things that we don't want to talk about. like this conversation, like feeling, like creating safe space, and really all take accountability for the fact that it's up to every single one of us to create a safe space for ourselves, but also for other people.
Hmm. I love that, D. If we could kind of encourage others to get more on uh, that plane or that flight, as I was saying in a group once, I mentioned fragile world, and I was in a community in which no one knew what I was talking about. And it's a real reminder they might not have been in environments where people talked about glass ceilings or
Exactly.
concrete ceilings or invisible walls or feeling comfortable or feeling uncomfortable at all.
Yeah.
But Dee, let us know, where can people find you?
Yeah. So, well, you can find, I think Catherine shared my stuff, but so I'm on YouTube for my podcast, which is What Lights Your Fire. And it's just YouTube, and then it's at Fire Within Coaching LLC. And our podcast, What Lights Your Fire, is an inspirational podcast. And you'll see Mel is on there as well. She's been one of our guests. And we, on this show, the aim is for you to share your passion, share your purpose, share your story, and hopefully will inspire other people to do the same. Because as I said, there's things that we don't talk about that we should talk about, and your passion and living your passion is one of them. So you can find me there as well. And it looks like Catherine had put up, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Alignable, and she shared my Calendly link as well. So if you ever just want to talk, just to see if maybe we're a good match or anything like that, or if you just want to say hi, feel free to go on Calendly and book a free consult with me.
And I think that last link might be to be a guest on Dee's
On the
amazing podcast.
show. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So the forms link that's on there, thank you, Catherine, for putting it on there. That is if you want to become a member of our show. We're trying something different. So I think I'll be doing posting 2 every Monday instead of 1, because we got such great response. So if you want to be on it, please fill out that forms and go ahead and get your appointment on the books.
That sounds really cool. One of the things I will encourage you as you're applying uh, and connecting with Dee is this wonderful woman has such a way of helping us relax. That creepy stuff that we wouldn't necessarily acknowledge. I tease Dee all the time. When
Yeah,
when we're getting together, I end up talking about some stuff I really had
I
not
love it.
intended to talk about. But really, I have to thank you for that, because it's more even than what Lachelle was saying about modeling safety. It's more you're you have a really keen sense of what others in our world need. I have to really thank you for that, because I really
Yeah.
cherish that. Adriana, let me tell you something. D and I are going to get together. We're gonna have to come hang out with you so that we can toast with you too. But there's
Yes.
there's something about you, your steps and your services that brings peace. There's not a lot of that in this world. So
There's not.
I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're really looking for people to help, light up our world. So we make it a
Yeah.
safer space, and D does that.
Thank
So
you.
it's also a reminder sometimes that until we feel safe and until we feel comfortable, we're not sure anybody wants to hear the story.
100%. 100%. As you know, it took me, I told you it took me a very long time to be comfortable with telling my own story. And take it, I was burnt out for over 10 years. It took me a while to figure out what I was going to tolerate and what I wasn't going to tolerate, and what I deserved to tolerate and not tolerate. So honestly, tell your story. Your voice is your biggest asset. Use your voice and tell people what you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate.
We also never know who needs to hear it sometimes.
100%.
Who needs to hear it in the room. And it's funny, as I was picking Mondays to go live on, and a lot of times we'll go live on the holidays. The first time we were together and we talked about what makes us feel personally,
Mm-hmm.
I started sharing something about how I felt on 9/11.
Yeah.
And in these podcasts, I told the story in even more detail. And
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to it earlier today on a replay. And I'm really grateful because hearing myself say it out loud, I needed to acknowledge
Yep.
this year, September 11th is a Monday. Mel is not going live. And it's a
Good
real
for you.
reminder to kind of acknowledge, here's what I need. And
Yeah.
it's also a reminder when we're trying to take breaks to mix it up and just give people a little bit of knowledge about what makes us feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
safe, uncomfortable, unsafe. We don't normally express it the first time.
No, and we don't because we don't feel safe, right? It's all, it really is. It's all a vicious circle. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to be able to tell people you don't feel safe because you don't know what what you feel safe about. So I did actually want to mention too, so everybody knows, if you do go over to YouTube, episode 25 is Miss Melanie Richards.
mm,
So
I
episode
have to
25.
I have to thank Miss D, as she would say, for that, because I think I would acknowledge before having implicit trust issues, and all of the trust work, talking about trust shadows, trust barriers. But they really started from a time when someone made me feel unsafe. So
Mm-hmm.
not addressing that safety issue at its root core when it
Right.
happens, and when it happens as a kid,
Oh yeah.
how you or whether you share it with your parents, with other
Mm-hmm.
adults, it really it kind of tilts and affects
Yeah.
mm,
Well,
decades
and
in some cases.
yeah, and you have to think about, as a parent, like how, like, if I go to my parent and I say, so and so did this or said this to me at school today, and the parent's response is, well, you know what, suck it up, you got this. So what the parent has just told me is that I can't go to them and tell them my feelings because they're just saying, suck it up, deal with it. Well, i'm not going to go to my I'm not going to continue to go to my parent, right? And that's because I don't feel safe showing them, because they showed me that I I shouldn't feel safe. So what that is, it's all about communication, because the parent, I'm sure, does not want the child to feel like they can't come to them. They might even say, come to me, but then when they do, then that's a contradiction right there. And parents, we get caught in that trap a lot with the contradictions.
It can be really challenging, and I think whether we're talking about safety or whether we're talking about trust, I think also somewhere under it, we're really talking about the part that there's got to be some faith there.
Mm-hmm.
Whether our faith walk is strengthened, the ability to approach or share without judgment, or
Mm-hmm. It's hard.
to find another resource for support, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the person we're reaching out to, there was something they needed support on and they didn't exactly receive it. So
There
they're
you
not
go.
necessarily sure how to return it in kind the
Mm-hmm.
way that you need it.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
It is. And whether you're the parent, the teacher, the aunt, the godparent, the grandparent,
Yep.
that, and especially in family businesses, what makes us feel safe at work may not be what makes us feel safe at home. So I
Mm-mm.
admire friends who are working in, family generational businesses,
Yeah, it's hard.
because what makes us feel safe there is a whole nother thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a whole nother episode.
Dia is smiling. We will continue to have amazing conversations like this. We're so grateful that you're joining us live
Mhm.
or for replays and for popping in and for sharing your comments, and let us know in between our impossible lives if there's something we can do to help you. You'll find too, if you're on LinkedIn or not, Mel's starting to really line up behind this hashtag IgniteTrust.
I like it.
If it's something of interest, and I thank you, Yvette Bethel, for giving me your blessing after trust certifications. But feel free to please follow my hashtag and invite others to follow it so that we continue these conversations. And as Dee would say, we're gonna make this a richer, fragile, less fragile world for
Yes,
others to
ma'am.
thrive and flourish in.
That's
Thank you so
wonderful. Thank
much for
you.
joining us today, and thank you, Dee, for the smiles across the miles and for keeping me cool in 85-degree weather.
Tell the hummingbirds I said hello and have a great
I
day.
will. I hope they come back. I know that last time I was just like, whoa,
I
it's
love it. I know I saw
fantastic.
your face. Your face was just like, oh, it was
Because
like pure
they were like
joy.
they were yes, they were just like all lit
I
up.
love it.
And yep, it's such a reminder. Take a few minutes, breathe in deeply when you can, treasure the view, treasure the space, and treasure our lives. So
Thank
until
you.
we meet again, stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch, and have a magnificent day. And please invite others to check out Amazing D, whether she's joining us live or for replays, and to pop into her wonderful podcast. Take
Thanks,
great
Mel.
care. Be safe. Stay cool.